Okay, so in this section we're going to talk about how to find the equation of a circle. So if I remember our xy plane that we did earlier in the year, then there are different equations from algebra and different things that have their own specific equation. For example, every line, if you recall, could be written as y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. Well, we also can do the same kind of idea and have a general equation for every kind of circle. So that's what we're going to do in this section, is try to write the equations of circles that can be plotted on an xy coordinate plane. And really this just comes from the Pythagorean theorem. If you look at this diagram over here at the right, if I call this point xy on the circle, and then I have this distance from the origin to the point on the circle, then we have a right triangle, for which we of course know x squared plus y squared equals r squared. So in this example, r is actually just the radius. So the radius is going to equal r. Now in this circle we have over here, how big is our radius? So you can see radius from lots of ways, but the easiest one is typically to go to an axis. 1, 2, 3. So the radius in this circle is 3. So my r squared is going to be 9. So the equation of this is x squared plus y squared equals 9. Because 3 times 3 is 9. This is the equation of a circle. Now the problem with this is, not a problem, but the unique thing about this one is, this one had a circle that was centered at the origin, at the middle. Makes it very simple. It's always x squared plus y squared equals r squared. If it's not, we have a slightly more complicated formula. And that formula is written down here. If we have a circle with center hk, so here's my circle hk, and a radius r, the equation of the circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So the same thing, but instead of just x squared and y squared, it's x minus h and y minus k. Very important that it's the opposite. See how it's x minus, so if it's positive it will become negative, if it's negative it will become positive. So let's look at a couple examples of how this works. Write the standard equation for a circle with a center of 2, 5 and a radius of 10. So this would be my h and k, and this would be my r. So I'm just going to write my circle equation down, x minus h squared, y minus k squared equals r squared. So h is negative 2, so x minus negative 2 becomes x plus 2. Again, always the opposite. Plus y minus 5 squared equals 7 squared. We could of course know what 7 squared is, because 7 times 7 is 49. So x plus 2 squared, y minus 5 squared equals 49. Now this next one is kind of interesting. It says their point negative 5, 6 is on the circle with center 1, negative 3. So what we don't know in this case is we don't know the radius. Well, let's just kind of think about what this circle looks like. So I'm going to draw it over here on the sides. You have 1, 3, that's our center, and then negative 5, 6 is a point on this circle. So the circle will kind of go around this center, but more importantly, this would be my radius. So since I have these points negative 5, 6, negative 1, positive 3, I can find the distance between those 2 points using our distance formula, and thus I will get my radius. So remember the distance formula, square root x1 minus x2 squared plus y1 minus y2 squared. So it will be negative 5 minus negative 1 squared plus 6 minus 3 squared. So this is going to be negative 5 plus 1, so this is negative 4 squared. 6 minus 3 is 3 squared. So it's going to be the square root of 16 plus 9. 16 plus 9 is 25, so the square root of 25 is 5. So the radius of this circle, the distance between the center and one of the points on the edge, is 5. So a little additional work we had to do for this one. So we could say the radius on this one is 5. And once you have that, we're good to go. We just write our equation. So again, it's x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. H and k is the center, r is the radius. That's going to become x plus 1 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 25. So here's another example where we have the equation and we can graph it. So the first thing it says, what is the center? Now remember, the center is always the opposite of these numbers. It was the opposite when we put it in, so it's the opposite when we take it out. So the center is going to be the opposite of negative 4, so it's 4. And it's going to be the opposite of 2, which is negative 2. So there's our center. The radius, remember, this is not r, this is r squared. So we have to take the square root of 36 to get our radius. So this radius is going to be 6, because the square root of 36 is 6. So now we got a center, now we got a radius, we can draw this really easily. So I'll first draw a point at 4, negative 2, which is there. That's my center. And my radius is 6, so I can go in any direction 6 units. So there's 6 units, there's 6 units, there's 6 units, there's 6. It's kind of harder to go diagonal to do 6. But now if I kind of connect those dots that I basically counted 6 away from the center, there's my circle. Okay, so that's really all there is. So we're just going to kind of run through a couple examples, trying to write some equations and do some graphing. So one says, write the equation for each of the circles shown below. Okay, well this one has a center of 0, 0. And if I start at that center and go out, it looks like it has a radius of 2. So up here again, remember it's x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. When I do x minus 0, I just get x, so that's x squared. When I do y minus 0, I get y, so that's y squared, equals radius squared, which would be 2 squared, which would be 4. So that's the equation that would match up with that circle. Now for B, again, another center at 0, 0. Radius in this case looks like 1, 2, 3. It's a little bigger. So the only thing that will change from the last one, because it has the same center, is instead of being 2 squared, it's 3 squared, which would be 9. Alright, so let's look at C. C has the center there, and that center appears to be at 2, 3. And then if I start at that center and go out to the edge, it's 2 units, so r equals 2. So again, remembering this equation up here, I just want to make sure I take the opposites when I put that in. So this would be x minus 2 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 2 times 2, 2 squared, which is 4. Okay, number 2, very similar, where we are trying to write the standard equation of the circle with the given centers and radius. So again, if the center is 0, 0, it's just going to be x squared plus y squared equals radius squared, which would be 9. B, very similar, except for we do have a center, so it's x minus negative 2, so the opposite is plus 2, plus y minus 5 squared equals 7 squared, 7 times 7, which is 49. Alright, now these, number 3 has some problems that are a little more tricky because we don't have the radius. This is similar to the ones we did on the other page where we just have a center and a point. So maybe we'll just do one of these because these definitely take a little more time. So let's just do A. So we have a center of 1, 4. So 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is up here. And we have a point in this circle, which is 3, 4. So there's my radius, and there's my circle. So I know the center. So if I start writing my equation, I know it's x minus 1 squared. And I know it's y minus 4 squared. I just don't know what the radius is. So to find the radius, we will have to use our distance formula to find the distance between these 2 points. So if I use the distance formula, it says subtract the x's, so I'll go 3 minus 1 squared. And then I'll go 4 minus 4, which turns out to be 0, that's nice, squared. So that's going to be the square root of 2 squared plus 0. So that's the square root of 4, that's just 2. So our radius is 2. So in our equation over here, now that we know what the radius is, we just simply take 2 times 2, which is 4. And there's our circle equation. So let's look at a graph a couple circles just by simply finding what the center and the radius are. So this first one, the center, we just take the opposite in the parentheses. So this would be 2, negative 3. And again, this is r squared, so the radius would be the square root of 16, which is 4. So 2, negative 3, which is there's my center. And if I go out 4 in a couple different directions, some might kind of go off the page, but it's okay. There is my circle. So that's a circle with center 2, negative 3, and a radius of 4. So next one, very similar. My center would be the opposite, so negative 2, positive 1. And the radius would just be the square root of that number, square root of 9, which is just 3. So negative 2, 1 would be there. And again, I just go 3 out in a couple different directions to get my circle. Okay, this last one, the center, if you look at it, inside the x, there's really nothing there. So if there's nothing, we just consider the x part 0. And the y part would be -2. And the radius would be the square root of 36, which is 6. So we got 0, -2. And in this case, we'll go by 2s, you can see. So 0, -2 would be here, and a radius of 6. So 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 6. Looks something like that. Alright, so hopefully this wasn't too bad. Let me know if you have any questions.